Our next story is about S. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister of India. Earlier this afternoon, he arrived in Moscow for a two-day visit. A visit aimed at strengthening India's ties with Russia, both politically and economically. He kick-started this visit with a big bilateral. A bilateral with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov. In attendance were a host of diplomats from both sides. So what did the two leaders discuss? Prospective energy projects. Well, there's one on the Arctic shelf and another in Russia's Far East. Both featured in these ongoing bilateral talks. But the big headline from their bilateral were Jaishankar's remarks on Russian oil. Now remember, India's procurement of discounted crude oil from Russia has seen a massive increase of late. This is despite growing objections in Western capitals. Jaishankar was asked about this during a joint press conference with Lavrov. He didn't hesitate in setting the record straight. He said that energy markets the world over are under stress, and as the world's third largest consumer of oil and gas, India's biggest priority is the energy security of its own people. Listen to this.
You know, the oil supply issue. You know, there is a, first of all, there is a stress on the energy markets. Okay, this is a stress which has been created by a combination of factors. But as today the world's third largest consumer of oil and gas, a consumer where the levels of income are not very high, it is our fundamental obligation to ensure that the Indian consumer has the best possible access on the most advantageous terms to international markets. And in that respect, quite honestly, we have seen that the India-Russia relationship has worked to advantage. So if it works to my advantage, I would like to keep that going.
You heard that. If it works to my advantage, I'd like to keep that going. There couldn't be a more apt description of India's stance. Jaishankar's argument was simple. If Europe can prioritize its people and buy Russian oil despite the war, so can India. Next, Jaishankar spoke about India's relationship with Russia. A relationship he described as quote-unquote exceptionally steady. He said that India and Russia have a time-tested equation, and New Delhi's aim is to make it more durable. Interestingly, Jaishankar also spoke about multipolarity. That is a world where power is evenly distributed and not restricted to a few superpowers. He said the world is moving towards multipolarity with Asia, and Asia is leading the trend. In the coming years, he said this trend will influence India's relationship with Russia. Watch this now.
The world is moving towards greater multipolarity through steady and continuous rebalancing, and that especially means a multipolar Asia. As prominent nations who have a positive history of working together, this will naturally influence the conversations between Russia and India. Our two countries are members of the G20, the BRICS, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, amongst others. How we work together in these formats is also on our agenda.
Now, all said and done, the expectations from Jaishankar's visit were quite high, especially in the Western world, which is billing New Delhi as a potential peacemaker, a possible negotiator between Russia and Ukraine. Well, Jaishankar didn't directly speak on these lines, but he did reiterate Prime Minister Modi's message on the conflict, that this is not an era of war. He said the global economy today is too interdependent. A conflict in one part of the world would have severe consequences elsewhere. Take a look at this statement.
As Prime Minister Modi conveyed to President Putin in Samarkand in September, this is not an era of war. The global economy is simply too interdependent for a significant conflict anywhere not to have major consequences elsewhere. India, therefore, strongly advocates a return to dialogue and diplomacy. We are clearly on the side of peace, respect for international law, and support for the UN Charter.
We are on the side of peace. India has made its message loud and clear that yes, it wants to prioritize its energy needs and interests as the second most populous country in the world. But at the same time, it is not in favor of war. That it wants the crisis to be resolved through dialogue, not by further dividing the world into camps. We hope India's critics in the Western world are listening. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.